to my YouTube channel. This is Mr. Charles and I am excited. This is Life of Pi, Chapter 1, a detailed analysis. Before I continue, please like, subscribe and comment. I think the comment is more important because the comment will give me time to reflect and try to improve. Okay, so whatever I have misinterpreted, please let me know, and if you do enjoy the video, let me know. Okay, so I want to start with this. You need to read Life of Pi. This video and many others, they are only supporting you. You need to read the primary text, and that is cover to cover. The author's note to chapter 100. And when you are done reading, guess what you must do? Do it again. Okay? Cover to cover, because in the exam, you will be given 2 extracts from, it could be from chapter 1 and chapter 99 or 50 or 51, I don't know, but you need to know Life of Pi from cover to cover. Okay, what I'm going to do, I'm going to provide a detailed analysis of the chapters. So obviously you need to know the author's note. Please check out the previous video where I debunk and explain the author's note. In chapter 1, I have a book here on my right hand side. So if I do look, it's only to remind me of salient points that I need to emphasize. The first point, Pi says that now Pi is the narrator. Pi is telling the story. Okay, so if you don't know, Pi is an Indian boy from Pondicherry, India. He is stuck on a lifeboat with Richard Parker, a Bengal tiger of 450 pound Bengal tiger from Pondicherry. Okay, on a lifeboat for 227 days. And it is a story about survival. It is a story about faith. It is a story about having belief within oneself and within one's ability as well. Okay, so Pi is the narrator. Here is the most important point of chapter 1. Chapter 1 is technically how the story ended. Okay, so Pi, he ends up on the Mexican coast after 227 days. Subsequently, he's interviewed by 2 officials from Japan, Mr. Chiba and Mr. Okamoto. They interview Pi, and while Pi is in hospital. So Pi is recuperating, he is recovering, he is anemic, and they want to know what happened to Pi. Okay, and Pi obviously tells them the story. They don't believe the first story. He tells them a second story, and then they find the second story also a bit problematic, and you ask them, which story do you prefer? They say the first one, but that's not the point. My point I want to make is that this is how the novel ended. So Pi is in hospital and he's being reflective. This is a reflective novel. Okay, so Pi, the adult, is telling the story about his ordeal. Instead of using the word experience in your NSC exam, use the word ordeal to account for his experience. First point, Pi says that I've kept up what some people consider my strange religious practices. I have kept up. So what he's telling us is that he is continuing to practice 3 religions at the same time. So it is Hinduism, it is Christianity and Islam. And he is practicing these religions at the same time equally. When Pi is an adult, he continued with this practice, with this peculiar practice of practicing three religions at the same time. In fact, he studied religious studies after his ordeal. So he went to a university after his ordeal and studied religious studies. Okay? He takes a double major, religious studies and zoology. Now this again is after his ordeal, and I want to emphasize because many learners, they are under the impression that he studies before. No, he was fascinated with zoology and religious studies. He was fascinated as a child, but after his ordeal, he studies the double majors, religious studies and zoology. In his zoology studies, he studies the sloth. Now you need to know why. He says he went to Brazil after his ordeal and studied the sloth because of its calm, quiet, and introspective demeanor. Okay? According to Pai, this brought calmness to his life, given his traumatic experience. I want us to agree that Pai is traumatized. Pai, the adult, is traumatized, and we are going to read and we're going to unpack the trauma. Okay? So he says it brought calmness, or it soothed my shattered self. So by studying this unique creature, quiet, calm, introspective, it brought calmness to his life after his ordeal. Okay? One question could be, how does the sloth survive? By being slow. It is able to survive by being slow. It stays out of harm's way. Okay? Very peculiar, very interesting. So Pai goes on to speak about the idea of memento mori. Memento mori. Now the memento mori, if you translate that, it is remember you must die. So Pai says that in his life, he is always reminded, it's like a grinning skull, reminding him of death. We are always reminders in his life about death. He says, I mock the skull because I don't believe in death, I believe in life. And the reason why he believes in life stems from religion. Not Hinduism, not Christianity, not Islam, all of them equally. Equally. So Pai says that we are not born religious. We are introduced to religion. It happened to be that I was introduced to Hinduism first by Auntie Rohini. Then I was introduced to Christianity by Father Martin, and introduced to Islam by Mr. Satish Kumar. Okay, and these three figures are absolutely important. Then you need to know the distinction between atheists and someone who is agnostic. An atheist is someone who do not believe in the existence of God. Agnostic, someone who doubts the existence of God. Now, more importantly, what is Pai's attitude towards people that are atheists? He says, no problem. If you are an atheist, according to Pai, at least you believe in something. So you believe in the scientific world or the scientific explanation of the world. The problem for Pai is when you are agnostic, when you doubt the existence. That's the problem. Because when Pai was on the lifeboat with RP, he had faith, he had inner strength, and he had a sense of belief that it was going to survive. So Pi says, how do you live your life in doubt? You can't live your life in doubt. You must always have faith. And the faith stems from religion. Okay? Then in chapter 1, he goes on to speak about Richard Parker. And he mentions here that Richard Parker stayed with me. This is metaphorical. So Richard Parker is the tiger. Some people argue. Okay, this is interesting. So Richard Parker is the tiger. Remember, Pi's father owned a zoo. Mr. Santos Patel owned a zoo in Pondicherry. And Richard Parker was part of the zoo. Okay? So he said Richard Parker stayed with me. This is a metaphorical, not stayed with me in terms of a literal sense, but in terms of memory. So what happened was when they ended up on the Mexican coast, Richard Parker left Pi. He left Pi. According to Pi, he abandoned me unceremoniously, without saying goodbye, without looking back. So it's an epic scene where Pi is on the lifeboat. Parker gets out and he is slowly approaching the jungle. And Pi is looking at Parker, and Parker is looking at the jungle, and not once did Richard Parker look back. Not once. And Pi is absolutely devastated because the looking back would have given him some confirmation, a thank you. And Parker did not look back. And to this day, even though the story is fictitious, Pi still, there's a void, there's an emptiness. He says, I miss Richard Parker. I dream of Richard Parker. Yes, my dreams are filled with nightmares, but nightmares tinged with love. Because the nightmare is a reminder that Parker had the ability to slaughter or devour him. Yet, Parker also had the ability to provide comfort and love and brotherhood because of the ordeal. Okay? So I want to speak now about the idea of trauma, and this is very important. So Pi studies the sloth because of trauma. When Pi's in hospital, right? He opened the tap for the first time, and the water gushed out, and he became incoherent and he fainted. You tell me in the comment section why. Why did he become incoherent and fainted? Why? Then he went to an Indian restaurant and he ate. Apologies for that, technical difficulties. Yeah. So the idea of trauma is very important in life of Pi. So Pi studies the sloth because of trauma. Pi, the adult is traumatized, and that point can be argued. Okay, so I mentioned the gush of water. Like the gush, it is inflicting trauma. It is inflicting the moment when he's on the lifeboat and he is envisioning the violent storms and the waves and the sound of the waves as well. All of that is coming back with a gush of water. That's trauma. Moreover, the adult, he goes to an Indian restaurant in Canada, and he obviously, stereotypically, you know, Indian people, they eat with their hands, and as he's eating with his hands, the waiter says, fresh off the boat, and he stops immediately. So Pi misunderstood the expression. What the waiter was basically asking, are you new? Because here we eat with a knife and a fork. So obviously you're new because you're eating with your hands. We don't eat with our hands here. We eat with a knife and a fork. Pi misunderstood the expression and thought about his experience and his ordeal fresh off the boat. And that's exactly what it was. He was fresh off the boat with Richard Parker for 227 days with limited resources at his disposal. So grade 12s, in Life of Pi, I want us to think about the idea of trauma. I can give you many examples. Number one, Pi studies the sloth because of trauma. The gush of water, trauma. Fresh off the boat, trauma. In chapter 2, it is mentioned that Pi is wearing a Parker jacket. He's wearing a thick jacket even though it's not cold. You tell me why. Trauma. In Pi's household, in the cupboards, there are canned food. It's packed. The food is packed. Why? The fear of what? The fear of starvation. Trauma. So Pi is a traumatized individual. Even the inclusion of the orange cat. So Pi, the adult, he has an orange cat. Why is the cat orange? Why a cat? You tell me. Trauma. So grade 12s, you need to get into the mind of the character. Okay, that's the only way you're going to master Life of Pi. Get into the minds of the character. So if you enjoyed this video, please like, subscribe, and comment, because it will only get better. Okay? Cheers, Mr. Charles.